Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Calgary, Alberta. Tuesday morning, November the 2nd. And I'm happy to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. And we're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And chat room is open, and I popped the link in there for the website that I wanted to continue looking at, Anchor Resources. I've been on this for about 3 weeks now at least. And it's really good information. I hope everybody will go check it out, www.angerresources.com, ANGERESOURCES.com. And there's all kinds of great links in there from Dave Decker and Michael Obsatz, two gentlemen who created this website to help people with their anger management problems. And, you know, if you think you might have a problem dealing with anger, it just seems to be causing problems in your life or something like in my life, you know, there's some great information there. I just wanted to cover some of it. And we probably won't look at all of it. It's extensive. But there's a few things I just was kind of interested in looking at dealing with survivor issues, adult survivor issues. And I think that it's important because, especially I know for myself, I'll just speak for myself, growing up the way that I did and not really learning how to effectively manage my own anger. I wasn't taught any real good coping skills, wasn't taught any proper ways to deal with anger. So, I didn't see any of that in my lifetime until I got out of the home that I grew up in, and still didn't know how to handle it. And so I really had a lot of problems with anger, and it really, I didn't want to be an abuser, and I certainly didn't want to hurt people. And then, but I was stuffing my anger, so it was causing me a lot of problems, like as far as not being able to deal with things properly, stuffing the anger. It just became intensified. It was very much internalized, intensified rage then, and I just needed to learn how to deal with it. And I think I've kind of been doing that all along for the last 3.5 years. But this information is very helpful, and it's good for myself. So hopefully you guys are getting something out of this too. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll get right into this topic. I'm not a counselor, I'm not a therapist, I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own blog talk shows, and I just want to be one more voice out here with the other survivors, who are saying, hey, we can do this. We do deserve to have a good life. We deserve to heal, and we have to look for that help where we can find it, Group support, therapy, counselor, calling a crisis line if we have to, somebody. It's really ultimately up to us as adults, right? And that's what I was really just, making a point there this, like yesterday and last week too, that really it is our responsibility as adults to find that help, right? As children, there's not much you can do putting up with what you're putting up with in a home. I was forced to endure what my parents wanted to put on my plate, and sadly enough, they created this world for me that was very dysfunctional and very much abusive, and then trying to deal with that as an adult and change the way that I behave, change my own behaviors, wasn't anything I could do to change the past. But I had to learn how to change how I felt about myself and how I felt about life now, and how I felt about moving through this life, to have a good life, and changing some of the things that I didn't like about that I was doing, because I couldn't change the past, right? So I had to change the way that I felt about myself and about the whole abuse and about the whole situation, right? So it's been very helpful for me once I actually realized it was up to me and stopped thinking somebody else was going to be able to do it. But it did take me a long time, and I would certainly hope it wouldn't take other people that long, and that's why I wish I would have reached out a long time ago. And so, you have to listen to all of my shows are very much talking about abuse and everything related to abuse. So you have to listen at your own discretion and know what's good for you to listen to. And, if the show makes you uncomfortable, you have to turn it off. I'm covering everything to do with abuse, which is a very sensitive topic for most people. And, so if it bothers you, just turn the show off. And if you're a young person under the age of 18, you have to have permission to listen to my show, because I'm all about protecting children. And, I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. And, we're fighting to stand up for child rights, protection. Child rights and the protection of children is number one, and you have to be protected, so you better know how to protect yourself online and get the information on how to keep yourself safe. And, especially when you're in chat rooms and online, you just never know. There's all kinds of child sexual predators out there trying to get a hold of children. And they'll do anything they can to get a hold of children. They'll say that they're 14 years old or 15, that they love to skateboard, that they like movies. They'll know all the music that you know, and they'll know all the cool stuff that you know as a teenager or a young a younger person, and they'll try to get you to meet them someplace or get your information so they can meet you someplace. And then that happens quite a bit. And children are assaulted by these child sexual predators, these adults who assault them and sometimes kill them. So you do not want to be a victim of a child sexual predator, and you have to know how to keep yourself safe online. So just start typing into your browser internet safety, online safety for children, internet safety for families or whatever, and you'll be able to bring up all kinds of great websites out there who are talking about how to keep yourself safe online, what to do, what not to do. There's so many good tips, for young people to keep yourself safe. We really want to keep yourself safe. So we'll get right into this article, and I wanted to finish looking at this one section. We were almost done with it yesterday, and taking the steps to stop the abuse. And there was 20 steps that Dave Decker had pointed out in his book. And Dave Decker, I haven't read the book, but Dave Decker has a book called Stopping the Violence, a group model to change men's abusive attitudes and behaviors. And he lists the 20 steps here on this website. And the book would probably be very interesting to read, I'm sure. And I don't have a copy of it, and I haven't read any of his books because I just recently stumbled across this website. So this is a great website. So we left off around, question around 17, I think. Take the risk to count on other men for emotional support. But I think that could go for anybody. If we're having problems dealing with our anger and we want to change our behavior, we want to stop abusing people, maybe stop abusing ourselves, and learn how to deal with our anger issues and whatnot, and try to learn how to have a good relationship. Dave Decker says, take the risk to count on other men for emotional support. So men can do this, women can do this, counting on other women for support, Develop friends and confidants with whom you can share your joys, sorrows, and difficulties in a consistent and ongoing way. It's good to have friends, and, that's the whole issue is a lot of times we don't have because of our issues, especially myself. I didn't have a whole lot of friends, and when I did find a friend that I actually felt I could confide in, they had to be somebody I'd really trust, to tell my most personal stuff to. And, these people would, most of them would try to be supportive. Some wouldn't. Some would just leave the whole relationship. They'd be like, no, you're too needy. I just can't deal with that. They weren't looking for that kind of a relationship or friendship. They were just wanting to just go out and eat all the time, and they didn't want to really know me, It's hard to find people who will stick with you the whole way and will not hurt you, It's that's what I found. I found it's very difficult to find people in my life that won't eventually end up hurting me, which is really sad, but it's so true, because people are just who they are, and for whatever reason they do what they do. But that doesn't mean that we have to be like them and hurt other people, right? I have a lot of good friends right now after I started reaching out and getting some help, who have been there for me and are very much emotionally supportive and who care, who really care. And that's the thing. So, you have to, like he says, take the risk, to count on other people. I think we just have to be careful who we tell our information to, especially if you're a survivor. There's some people that will not understand it. There's other people that will, and then there's other people that won't want to help, and there's other people that will. But I think once I started reaching out, I found all these hands came back to me to start reaching out, and it wasn't my family. It was friends. And so, it just kind of shows you where people are at, right? My family is completely unsupportive, and my own life, the only person that's supportive in my own personal life is my sweetheart, and he's always been supportive. So, which is great. But we have to have friends, people we can confide in, people we can talk to, and share our sorrows and our joys and our problems with, right? Who will care. Question number 18, or step 18, he says here, learn to experience a genuine sense of pride in who you are by taking control of how you view and how you act around the important people in your life. It says, assume personal power in your life rather than trying to exert power and control over others. I think he meant to say right, or whatever. It says, assume personal power in your life rather than trying to exert power and control over others. So, that's just it. I think we just need to realize that we can't really control what other people are going to do, but we can control how we behave and how we act. And in doing so, it kind of brings around people that are the same way, because they appreciate that about a person, right? That you're not going to try to control the whole relationship, that you're not going to try to exert your power and control over them, and they realize that, so they become more comfortable talking to you. I think people can pretty much, especially if you've been abused, you can spot that spot on. I can always tell when somebody's trying to manipulate things because I grew up that way, right? And so as soon as somebody starts to manipulate things and try to manipulate things and exert their power and control, immediately a wall goes up for me because I'm like, hey, had enough of that, not going there. And so then I tend to leave that relationship very quickly. But people who are open, and really genuine and honest, and who, aren't trying to control or trying to exert their power and control over me, I'm pretty much open to listening to them and to experiencing, their life with them, and they experience mine. And so I think that, it's good to find good people who are just honest and open and do care, And it's not any good to go on and take abuse from people and take this and be re-victimized. If you're already abused as a child or grown up in domestic violence situation, you certainly don't need any more of that, right? And so I became very particular about who I spend my time with. I'm very particular about who I actually let into my life, and yet you have to take a chance, otherwise you won't have anybody. And that's where I was at. I thought, hey, well, you're just taking a chance, but you know what? It doesn't matter, because you will never be able to experience anything with anyone if you don't ever open up and allow people to come into your life, But you definitely have to set boundaries, and you have to know what you'll tolerate and what you won't tolerate. And I think by setting boundaries, we can learn to set boundaries. That's what I've done. And learn to say, hey, what will I tolerate? What will I not tolerate? I'll treat people respectfully, but then I want to be treated respectfully, right? We have to treat people the way that we would want to be treated. And so, if you have respect for people, they will genuinely have respect for you, and if they don't, well, they don't have to be in your life, and that's where I'm at. I don't allow people to abuse me in my life now, coming through that whole miserable existence that I grew up in, and carrying that through to my 40s. I thought, no way, never again. Took a stand, and sometimes you have to do that. But then again, I don't punish everybody just because I was abused as a child, and I think that's the whole issue, is that we don't have to punish the world because we were abused as children. And I've seen people do that, and it's like it's almost because they've had such a hard time dealing with the whole thing, that the whole world is this horrible place. And that's just sad, because then you never get to experience any good stuff. And I've met some awesome people throughout my lifetime, even while I was being abused. I had a lot of good friends, and they were being abused as well, but we still managed to, enjoy each other's company, and a lot of friends that I had, throughout my lifetime were such an awesome part of my life. And so, had I shut down and just thought the whole world was bad and not had any interaction with people, I would have never got to meet these people. I would have never got to experience the friendship and the camaraderie, right? So, I decided not to be like that. Not to carry that type of feeling with me all the time, you know what I mean? So, it's I don't know, it's a matter of just looking at what you need for your own life, and then deciding what kind of life you want to have, that big time. Number 19, start to believe in your heart of hearts that you can truly change the controlling and abusive parts of who you have been. So he's talking to men here, but, because this book is for men that he's written, but it really could be for anybody. Because women can be abusive too, right? So it says, begin to visualize a new and different you and behave toward others with that vision in mind. So a new and different you, like let's say for myself, I was very much abusive when I was younger, and I had to really change that, because people were pointing out to me how my behavior was, especially at work. Not my own family, but because my family was dysfunctional, so they didn't recognize anything different. They didn't really care how I was behaving because they were so dysfunctional themselves, right? But people at work, my bosses would quite often tell me, that I should tone down the language and clean up my language. I had a really foul mouth for a long time, and because my mom taught me how to cuss, right? My mom was my biggest teacher as far as telling me how to teaching me how to cuss and curse people, and how to be extremely abusive and do horrible things to people, right? Because that's what she taught me, right? And so, I just kind of carried that on at work too, right? And so I would often get into fights with people at work and want to do these horrible things to them. And thank God wouldn't follow through with it. But the thing is I was just a vicious person, just like my mom, right? And I had some people point out to me my behavior, and I really had to do a sort of a second double take. I was like, really? Am I really behaving like that? I didn't even realize really that it was an issue because I had just grown up like that. So we have to change that abusive stuff. We have to change that and not be the abuser. And that's what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be my parents, right? Once I realized what I was doing, I was like, oh my God, I'm just exactly like my mom, and I'm starting to turn into my mom and act like my parents. Oh my God. And it really shocked me because I thought, oh, I definitely don't want to be like them. You know what I mean? And so we have to be responsible for our own behavior. And I think that's why he's saying here, begin to visualize a new and different you and behave toward others with that vision in mind. And that's the whole thing. If people are abusive, and they want to change that, they have to start acting in non-violent, non-abusive ways. The only way to do it is really to make it happen, I think, And so, I have a good friend here in the chat room. Hello, Gypsy Witch. And yeah, this is the thing, right? We can't, if we don't want to be the abuser, then we have to change our ways, right? So that's the whole issue. And so we have to visualize that new person and then start behaving like that, with these better behaviors, so that we don't become these abusive abusers. You know what I mean? That's the whole issue. Passing that cycle on, that's bad news, right? Number 20, don't expect a partner with whom you have been controlling and abusive to applaud or even acknowledge the efforts and the changes you are making, especially early in the process. So it says, healing for women in abusive relationships and for the relationship itself is a long and difficult process. Control, abuse, and violence destroy trust, safety, and intimacy in relationships. If your partner is willing to stay with you, the healing requires a consistent pattern of emotional and behavioral change on your part over time. It says, women in abusive relationships often still love their partners, but they do not want the controlling and abusive behavior to stop. Oh, but they do want, they do want the controlling and abusive behavior to stop. Plan to get emotional support and encouragement from other places in your life and work hard not to use the partner's apparent lack of interest and support as another reason to become abusive with her in the present. So this is what a lot of people do. They think, oh, well, I'm changing, and look at me, look what I'm doing. I'm actually changing, and I'm not abusive towards my partner anymore. And then the partner isn't moving along as far as, the support goes as fast as the abuser or the ex-abuser thought that they should. So then they become abusive again because they're like, well, if you're not going to appreciate what I'm doing, then, the fact that I'm trying to change, then I won't change and I'll just lash out again, right? And I think, that's that whole issue of not really changing, not really wanting to change. The real change happens in the longevity, right? It's not these little attempts, I think a lot of abusive people make these attempts to stop being abusive, and then when people don't acknowledge it, then they become highly abusive, you know what I mean? And they're just become irate because they think, hey, look at all the work I'm doing to try to change my behavior, and now, these people don't even appreciate it, or my partner, my spouse, my children, whoever, and look at this, and now, so then they go on and hurt them even more, which drives a huge wedge into the whole thing, because what it is this whole issue that you set them up, you set your family and people in your life up for a bigger fall, because they might have had some glimpse or some hope that you might have changed your behavior, and changed your abusive ways, and then all of a sudden you're back to it. And that's that whole, oh, I'm sorry, I'll change type of thing, and then you don't change. That's that whole abusive pattern. If you check out the abuse wheel, it's part of the abuse wheel. It's abuse. It's a power and control issue, right? And so if you just because somebody doesn't acknowledge you changing right away, it's because you're probably having a hard time with it. And so, as people who have abused other people, you have to give them time, and you have to be willing to go through that time, and it could take a long time. It doesn't happen overnight, and you can't expect people to change overnight, and that's the whole issue, right? I've just seen too much of this stuff growing up in an abusive home and growing up with domestic violence, and then watching my friends become involved in domestic violence situations. It's the same old thing, right? And it's just this whole power and control and absolute craziness. And so not everybody's going to appreciate someone's changing, an abuser changing. My parents never did change towards each other. They were always abusive towards each other, and they never did ever reconcile until the last year of my mom's life, right? So they kind of tried to reconcile at that point. But I mean, just prior to that, I mean, I had witnessed their whole entire cognitively 25 years of their marriage, and it was hell. And they never did try to be good to each other. They didn't say, "Oh, I'll change," or, my dad never said, "Okay, I'll behave myself, I'll change." My mom never said that either. They both just had no intentions on changing their behavior. So I actually witnessed this kind of stuff in other relationships with other people. This whole, I'll change, don't leave me, I'll change, or, this. I witnessed this in some of my sister's relationships as well as some of my friends' relationships, and I've seen it, from other people, and it's just not a good way to be. If a person's really going to change, then they're really going to change. But if they're going to go do this wishy-washy thing, like, oh, I'll change, and then become abusive because the other person's not doing exactly what they want and feeling the exact things that they want, they're still using that power and control. They're still having a problem with their own controlling attitudes. So that's what he says here. Overcoming abusive and controlling attitudes and behaviors is a lifelong process that involves self-awareness, finding effective ways to deal with life's stress and frustration, and seeing and making better choices when anger and a desire to control and become abusive do arise. Contrary to what some people believe, abusive men can change, not just in stopping the physical violence, but also in intervening in emotional and verbal abuse and addressing the controlling attitudes that fuel the other sorts of abusive behavior. And I think women can change too. I mean, not just men, but he's talking to men here. Continuing to be abusive will lead quite simply to feeling bitter, miserable, alienated, and alone. And this way of being is a dead-end street. And that's where my parents were at. My mom was on a dead-end road to bitterness and alienation. She alienated her children. She alienated her husband. My dad alienated his wife and his children. And that's why I say the whole family was destroyed because of it, and we were. So, they created this whole dead-end street, dead-end road thing for themselves, right, with no way to heal, no way to move forward, because they would not ever confront their own issues and change the way that they were feeling and treating each other and the children. So that's the whole issue. It's a horrible life. It says the alternative to this depressing life script is different and better. Working actively toward loving and nurturing connections with others and yourself. Make a commitment to yourself and those you care about that you will become one of those men or women who chooses to become non-abusive and non-violent. It can happen if you decide to make it so. That's just awesome. I just love that because it's so true. People can change, but they have to want to. I used to say, well, people won't change. People can't change. Now, I think that some people can't change. I mean, there's child sexual predators out there who can't change. They keep doing what they do. It's absolutely horrible because, we study this stuff, There's a lot of child sexual predators out there who think they've gotten help and then they go back out and they re-offend, right? And there's a lot of abusive people who do the same thing, They think that they're okay and then they go out and they re-offend, And it's like we are ultimately responsible for our behavior. So, that's the whole issue. We can't go and just keep blaming it on something else. Oh, well, I tried, or, this or that. It's like, no, you either are an abuser or you're not. There's just no in between. Oh, sometimes I'm an abuser, sometimes I'm not. No, it's either you're abusive or you're not. You're an abuser or you're not, right? And I decided that I did not want to be an abuser. I certainly didn't want to let people run all over me either, by becoming so passive that I just allow my life to be run by other people. But, we have to be assertive without being abusive, and that's what this website is all about. So that's why I hope you will check it out. It's no good to be passive and let people just ruin your life. But then again, you got to be assertive without being abusive. And if you don't know how to do it, this website's perfect because there is all kinds of information on here about that. And that's what I'm learning to do, because I became passive because I didn't want to hurt people. See, because my whole life I just witnessed people hurting people, and I myself was hurting people. So I thought, well, I'll just be passive. So I thought, well, I'll just, and then I was taken advantage of by quite a few people because I was not being assertive. Then I'd become angry and rage. And then I, of course, would internalize all that and become self-injuring or, consider suicide, which I had been doing my whole life. So that's the whole issue. It was a pattern, and I noticed it. And I thought, man, I have to change this. I can't keep living like this. It's a horrible, horrible way to live, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. So the next article I want to look at, he's got some really cool information here. The domestic abuse has to stop, and it can. It's from the same website, angerresources.com, www.angerresources.com, /abusestop.html. And I'm going to pop that into the chat room. And this one has got some good information on here. Yeah, I have a comment in the chat room saying, no such thing as try, only do. And that's right. You know what? It's like, you either are or you're not. You either are going to change and not be abusive, or you're not. You're just going to continue on, fooling yourself and everybody else as far as, I can change, I can do this, right? It's you either do it or you don't, This is the thing. It's the thing with anything in life, right? So the domestic abuse has to stop, and it can, by Dave Decker. At times, I'm just reading from his page here, at times it seems like violence is everywhere. We are constantly bombarded by the media with reports of muggings, rapes, road rage on our highways, murders in our communities, wars and hotspots all over the globe. Given all the violence around us, one would hope that our homes would be a refuge and a safe place to return to at the end of the day. Unfortunately, this often isn't the case. And the reality that domestic abuse, disrespectful, and even violent behavior in a family setting is all too common. Even our homes are not safe for many in this country, he says. Sadly, in the United States, a woman is more likely to be assaulted, injured, raped, or killed by a male partner than by any other type of assailant. Domestic violence has been identified as one of our country's most significant public health concerns, not just in terms of its impact on women who are abused, but also due to its damaging and long-lasting impact on the children who grow up in a family where domestic abuse is occurring, and on the men who are perpetrating the abuse. And he goes on to talk about that. He says, controlling abusive and violent behavior devastate the fabric of our families and our society. Explosive anger and abusive behavior are unacceptable and ineffective ways to resolve conflicts and solve the problems that arise in our lives. They destroy trust, intimacy, and safety in a family setting and replace these with hurt, fear, resentment, and emotional distance. And this is not the way to live. This is not the way to stay connected to the most important people in our lives, other members of our family. So he goes on to say the primary goals of abusive behavior are to hurt, punish, intimidate, and control other people. This desire to control is an especially important part of why domestic abuse occurs. Both men and women in a heterosexual relationship can be controlling and abusive. Anybody, even people in a same-sex relationship, anyone can be a controller and abusive, right? It says control and abuse by either partner is not all right. It's just not all right. However, we as men, especially of our size, musculature, and socialization, are much more likely to be able to impose our will and dominate a relationship through abusive or violent actions. In addition, we have a much greater potential, especially if there have been instances of property destruction, threats, or actual physical violence, to create an atmosphere of fear, intimidation, insecurity, and humiliation more than do our female partners. It says women are also more likely to be seriously injured if violence is occurring in the home. Once again, this is not to say that women cannot be hurtful or violent. They can. But abuse in a family setting becomes particularly destructive when there is a consistent and ongoing pattern of controlling and abusive behavior by a physically more powerful person, where the less powerful person feels fearful that physical abuse may be used to control what is happening. And one of the most important ways to begin to intervene in domestic abuse is to understand what abusive behavior is. And many of my clients have said they're not even aware that what they've been doing is considered abuse. That's what Dave Decker says here. This is the focus of the remainder of this article. Domestic abuse can be divided into several different categories, which are discussed below. So Dave Decker sees people, on a regular basis. He's a therapist and he has clients, and, he's saying that many of the people that he's actually seen don't even know that what they've been doing is considered abuse. And that was my parents knew what they were doing was abuse because they got brought up on charges, on child abuse charges. But the thing is that that's how they grew up. And that's how they lived their whole entire lives. And they just thought that it was totally cool to abuse each other and to totally, to abuse their kids. And they really thought that, that we were bad and we deserved the treatment that we got. And they were happy to give it to us. They were happy to beat on us and to verbally abuse us and curse on us and spit on us and make us feel extremely bad. They thought that was cool. And that's the whole issue, right? I mean, a lot of people abuse and are so screwed up in their minds that they don't even consider it abuse, right? So we'll finish this off tomorrow. We'll take a look at this, or at least we'll get started on it tomorrow. So you can check this out. Make sure you do, www.angerresources.com/abusestop, ABUSESTOP.html. Have a great day, everybody. Keep reaching out. We've got about a minute left. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. I'll be back on tonight with Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, www.blogtalkradio.com/Dreamcatchers here on Blog Talk Radio with Elizabeth Brawley and myself. We're bringing out the headlines, and I'll be back on tomorrow, same time, 6 o'clock a.m., one child abuse survivor to another. And take care of yourselves. Make sure you get some help. Reach out You do count. You do matter. I don't care what anybody's ever said to you in the past. You do count. You do matter, and you do deserve to have a good life. You hang in there, and you do whatever you can to stay alive, and you do whatever you can to get yourself some help. You know, you do deserve the best of everything. So, you matter to me. So take care of yourselves, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.